Converted Man here. Is there evidence that will satisfy the pesky atheists and skeptics that God exists? Oh, is there any evidence that will satisfy them? No! No, of course not. No answer / evidence will satisfy someone who's already made up their mind to reject it. And that holds true for any issue, not just theological questions. I used to spend so much time dealing with anti-theists online. I remember spending hours doing research in order to find the best information to answer this or that challenge posted to me by anti-theists. I'm slow, but finally dawned on me that these people have no interest in what I was saying. I'd answer one thing, and they'd move to another. I'd answer that, and they'd move to another. It would go on for days sometimes. I can only recall one time that anyone ever acknowledged one of the answers I'd given. I'm done with that nonsense. I have zero interest. Oh, that's in that's in this video. Well, not in the video. It's in the comment section of this video. Here you go. See there it is. See, it says that's the guy. That's that was their answer. I said there is no evidence, and that was the problem. But I like these comments. Before I even get to the video, I just love these comments. Amen! Oh, yes, the classic amen. No evidence will suffice when they've been blinded by sin, pride, rebellion, or the devil either. Well, I mean, if I'm blinded, if I'm blinded, then, well, what can I do? Help! If you're blinded, then help. What do I do? How do I get out of that? So yeah, it goes on and on. So here's the thing. Oh yeah. Wait. This one's really good. This one's really good. Like this. The time had a beginning. Okay. I don't know. Well, kind of time had a beginning. Sure. Fine-tuning of physical constraints. Okay. And specify complexity of DNA, which is a result of biological evolution and not a result of design. So, not sure what you're going with there. Specify complexity of the molecular machinery required to use the information in DNA. I think that's kind of the same thing, but again, evolution explains these things. Cosmology explains this thing, so does physics explains that bit. Fulfilled prophecy, I love the fulfilled prophecy. There isn't any. The one few that you can maybe point to are so vague. And then, of course, at least one of them didn't ever come to pass, hasn't come to pass. And I don't know. Some of them have absolutely failed. So, I mean, And archaeological support for the scripture's reliability. You mean that there's cities that are in the Bible have been actually found? Wow. New York exists. Therefore, Spider-Man's real. Yeah, 50 and 150 AD. There's a prophecy about that. I'm not sure exactly what prophecy that is, but yeah, that's not evidence for God. That's not evidence for God. That's not evidence for God. That's not evidence of God. You don't have fulfilled prophecy, so that's not evidence for God. And the only archaeological support you have confirms a few locations and kings and people. That's not evidence for God. But maybe the video itself has something. It doesn't. But maybe it does. It doesn't. I'm Converted Man. Oh, sorry. There's a... Hi, John. Yeah, no, it's not learned from a book. It's learned from reality itself. It's not evidence. And here's the thing. Okay, Why? Why don't you think that this is evidence? See, John should have asked that follow-up question. And they should tell John to say, well, wait, let's first establish what the hell evidence even is. That might be good. And then, of course, well, like I covered, the things that were mentioned, those are... Really? It's muted? My video or their video? Me? Them? Me? Them? Huh? Wait, what? No, that can't be me, because I'm blinking. Can you hear it now? Oh, wait, hold on. No.
Countenance of view contrary to theirs.
Do you
All
hear
right.
that?
I've written about this.
Okay, do you hear it now, Dave? Or if not, I'll just have to restart this whole damn thing. Try again. Still? Or what? Ah! Technical problems. I blame the devil. That's what I blame. So his answers, the boilerplate expected answer. Oh, it did come through. Okay. All right, cool. All right.
Because what it displays, I don't know if it's from a book or not, but what it displays is just an unwillingness to countenance realistically and honestly, countenance a view contrary to theirs.
Ginormous straw man poisoning of the well. No, it doesn't. I don't care. I don't even look. I don't understand how many times we have to explain it. So here, this might help you guys to understand. Maybe. Okay. So check it out. This is God, and that's God, and that's God. All three of these are God. Okay. Now, you probably don't believe that this is God, or that that's God, or that the other thing is God, right? But somebody somewhere might. Let's just pretend that people are. They call this God, they call that God, and they call this God. So A, B, and C, all called God. They all share the same name. So, you ask me if God is real. I don't know which God you're talking about. And the thing is, you only believe in one of these. You believe in C, or you believe in A, or maybe you believe in both, but I don't know that. And so, well, what do you mean by God? Here's another question that you might want to ask yourself rather than not talking to the atheist, which I notice that you're not interacting with an atheist here to get a clarification, is what evidence would you accept for this God as opposed to that God? Like, you have evidences for your God, apparently. Would those same evidences also prove a different God? And if not, why not? So, all the things that one person put in the comments at the beginning of time, or fine-tuning, all that, okay, that could be anything. Could just be the laws of physics itself, or it could be any of these gods. So it doesn't, okay, then you say fulfilled prophecy. Well, they make the same claims to fulfilled prophecy. The Lobsterist has fulfilled prophecy in it. So what? That does that prove God? What else you got? Or archaeology confirms the reliability. They have archaeology for their claim too. So what? So see, if it wouldn't convince you some other God is real, then you don't have evidence. You have bad arguments. Okay? That's it. It's not about that, oh, I'm stuck in my non-theism and I just don't want to accept that this is true. I'd love to accept that it's true because I want to know what's true. I want to know what's real. Okay, I want to know that this God is real versus this God that isn't real versus that God that can't even hope to be real because it's incoherent and impossible, right? I want to know that. And I'm sure you do too. What if it turned out that the evidence wasn't for your God, but was for some other God instead? Would you accept that as truth? Or would you reject it because you don't want it to be true? You want your God to be true. What evidence would convince you that you're wrong? What would disprove your hypothesis? But typically and usually, when we're talking about evidence for the thing, we're talking about evidence for the thing. I know, it's really complicated. See if you can follow along. Here's this God. At least it's a drawing of God. This like looks like what God looks like, right? Okay. Now, how do I know it's God? It's a very good question, but regardless, there it is. Okay? I have something to show you. That's what God looks like, okay? Your guys' drawing of God is this. Nothing. There's nothing to draw, right? So, I don't know what God looks like. Well, what's God, what's it sound like? Can I hear it? Nope. Can't hear God. Can't touch God. You can feel God. Unless you can't feel God, because not everybody can feel God. So, what about that? So, there's no way to verify God with your sensory inputs. And so, usually, if somebody's saying, I need evidence for God, they're talking about that. They're talking about the fact that we cannot visualize God. Or they might be saying, there's nothing that we can do that would test for God. There's no test that we could run to show that God's a thing. And that's a problem for them because everything else is testable. Why wouldn't God also be testable? And besides that, in if you're talking about certain gods are testable. Certain God claims are testable. So if we do the test and the test fails, then that would have to mean that that God isn't real. But weirdly and oddly enough, for whatever reason, the theist doesn't want to do the test. They don't want to do the test. They'll say that God's not willing to do the test. And that's kind of suspect to me. Kind of suspicious about that. A little bit odded out by that.
All right. I've written about this in Street Smarts, the charge that there is no evidence.
Well, yeah, there isn't any, just bad arguments.
And it's just false.
No, it's true. And I'd love for you, what evidence have you got of God itself? Not things you think that point to God, but of God itself.
Now, there's a difference between evidence and compelling evidence.
No, there isn't. I don't know why apologists do that. This is like, I think the second, third apologist that's done something like this. There's good evidence and there's bad evidence, no, there's just evidence. That's it. If you have evidence, then you have evidence. You have the data. If you don't have evidence, then you don't have evidence. It's not compelling or not. See, what you're talking about is argumentation. Either the argument's compelling or it's not the evidence itself, because the evidence itself doesn't point to anything. The evidence on its own, let's say time beginning, that doesn't say anything more. Okay, and so time began. So what? That doesn't prove anything. That's not evidence for anything other than that time began. So, how does that tie into God? Well, reason X, Y, and Z. That's an argument. No longer evidence.
All right. Let's just say there was a murder, okay?
The analogy. Here we go.
and it happened in a you know it happened wherever it happened.
Man, this analogy is great.
Excuse me. Turns out I was close by.
Ah, he did it. Absolutely, he did it.
And I also had a motive. Okay. The fact that I was close by and had a motive turns out to be evidence against me.
Uh, yeah. You're innocent until proven guilty. So, I mean, that's not evidence against you. That's evidence that you committed that actually, that it's not evidence of anything. It's suspicion to think that you might have committed the crime. How they know that you have a motive, I don't know, and that you're close by, well, that's something that we're assuming that they know. But that's not evidence that you did it. That's not evidence at all. Your analogy is already broken. Yeah, it was a murder on a plane while you were talking to an atheist, right?
Now, it's not conclusive evidence, but it
It's
is a
not even
piece
evidence.
of a piece of a case that could be made against me. Now, if it turned out that I had, even though I was close by, that I had a powerful alibi, that would overwhelm those particular pieces of evidence.
Not necessarily. I mean, well, what kind of alibi do you have here? You're on video, and the video shows was somewhere that you couldn't possibly hope to tamper with it, and you didn't know you were being videotaped, and the video shows a timestamp at all times, and you were recorded when the murder took place. You were there at the store buying stuff or whatever, and you know, so yeah, okay, but that's actually evidence that you were somewhere else, right? So the recording of you, well, I mean, is it tampered with? We're gonna look into that, obviously, right? And if we found something suspicious, and let's say you had access to the tape and you knew where they kept the tape, and I mean, it starts to look suspect, right? But you don't have anything even remotely like that for God. So where's the evidence like that for God? See, that's the thing, is like there's no translation for the analogy to fall into.
But evidences are pieces that lead to a conclusion.
No, 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 no. No, see, you're confusing one version of how we can reconstruct an event where you're gathering evidence of what happened at the crime scene, uh, evidence of what happened. You have a footprint, that's evidence. You have gunpowder, you have fingerprints. That's all. You have DNA, that's evidence, right? Of something. You don't know what exactly. It's like, oh, we know that Joe Blow, who hated this guy, he was nearby. That's not evidence. That's just a suspicion, right? Because it might not be true. Maybe he didn't hate Joe Blow. I don't know. Maybe they made up and nobody knew they made up. All sorts of things. So, but you're confusing that with evidence of the thing itself. So we have ample evidence that whatever the heck is Greg, Greg exists. We have complete and utter confidence that Greg exists. I don't doubt for a moment that Greg exists and that he has a styrofoam or cardboard thing behind him that's sound absorbing, and he's got some green lights shining on it. He's in a recording studio of some sort, or at least it appears to be a recording booth or studio of some sort. Maybe that's just the background. Maybe it's a green screen. It doesn't really look like a green screen to me, but it could be. If it is, it's a pretty dang good green screen. But nonetheless, I have ample evidence that he is there and that he is talking. Now, maybe he's not really Greg and he's lied to us about his identity, but I don't have any reason to think that's the case. So if I had the same amount of evidence for God as I have for Greg, I wouldn't be an atheist. But I don't. I have nothing like that for God. So your broken analogy is broken.
At least potentially. And if the evidence is good and there's enough of it, then you are justified.
And again, with this good, if you have evidence of the thing, then it's not good or bad. You just have evidence. It's no category. What would bad evidence be? What does that even mean? That's a nonsensical idea.
Preponderance of evidence or beyond a reasonable doubt, they're two different criteria. One's civil.
Right, and there you go. Your analogy doesn't work for God, and you know that. So why are you even using it?
Well, the other criminal. But nevertheless, as these things add up, the chances that one outcome was the case and that one individual was probably guilty increases until you're justified by looking at the pieces of evidence as they fit together and coming to a conclusion that more likely than not, preponderance of evidence, that person did it, or yes, he did it beyond a reasonable doubt.
All right, let me just fix your broken analogy. And we're going to stick with the crime scene because why not? Okay? And we're going to pretend that you and I know anything about criminal crime scene investigation, even though we both don't. We were told, we got the call. The dispatch has put us out on this call. There's been a report of a murder. And there are several eyewitnesses to the event. Let's say 12, just for fun. We go there. We talk to all the people that say they saw it. We say, where's the body? They say, it's gone. What happened? It vanished into thin air. They all agree. We take them individually, interview them separately. They can't hear each other. The body has mysteriously vanished into thin air. They all say the same thing. Would the conclusion be that the body vanished into thin air? Would that be a reasonable conclusion to make? Yes or no? If yes, well, I don't know what I can do with you anymore. But if you say yes, then you truly do believe in magic. And that could be a problem because we humans have never seen a body vanish like that. We don't have any evidence that that can happen. And the mere fact that we have people telling us that that's what happened isn't evidence either. They could be making it up, and more than likely, they are making it up. Okay, well, what if we had a video that showed that the body was there and then vanished into thin air? Well, what we would expect is that video was faked. Because, again, we would suspect that no, bodies don't vanish into thin air. We'd have graphic artists look at it, experts in CGI and magic tricks look at it. Maybe it was done practically. We'd also investigate the bleep out of that scene to make sure there wasn't trapdoors or the video fakery of some sort. And let's say that we didn't find anything. I think it would be fair to say we should probably still be a little bit skeptical that the body vanished into thin air. Because, again, we don't really have much to go on. We have something. We have 12 people that said they saw it. We have a video that seems to suggest that it happened. But the fact that we have never before seen anything like that ever occur any other time anywhere else makes us suspect that this event probably didn't happen. The overwhelming evidence stands opposed to this things that you might call evidence. You might say, oh, that's bad evidence, or it's evidence. It's evidence of something happened. Well, it's evidence that those people made a claim. The video is evidence that the video exists. We need more. We need way more than that. Why? Because it's an unusual event, and so we're going to demand more evidence. Well, what if we don't have any more than that? Well, we're going to keep investigating, aren't we? Because we're not just going to give up and say, well, it must have vanished. No, we're going to want more than just that. Here's a different scenario. Let's say, again, murder investigation. This time, of course, the body is there, but they all say that they all accuse each other of doing it. And we don't know what to make. We take all their DNA is at the scene. Every single fingerprint is there, and well, it's inconclusive. That happens. Maybe it was a conspiracy to kill the person, right? But actually, in this case, the weird thing is, there wasn't a body at all. They just reported a murder. There's no blood. There's no evidence of a crime. But these 12 people are all saying that somebody was brutally murdered and that each one of them is accusing the other of doing it. They all insist that it really happened. Would that be evidence that that crime actually occurred? No. Something's going on, something weird. They're trying to get each other into trouble. There's more to investigate, and that's the point. You are becoming satisfied rather quickly with your investigation on very little to no actual evidence to follow. But let's make it even harder. We're called out to a crime. There's no body. There's nobody that saw it. There's no one around. We asked the dispatcher, what happened? The dispatcher says, what do you mean, what happened? So we were called out to go to this crime. The dispatcher said, I never called you guys out there. And we must be mistaken. Or maybe the dispatcher killed somebody. Or let's say we did, I could go on and on, right, with weird scenarios where you're puzzled at what the conclusion is. How about this? We investigated murder, and after 2 days had passed, we think that we found the person that killed them, but we're called by the morgue and the body's gone missing. And then we see that person walking around and everything is just fine. Well, what the hell happened there? I guess it must be a miracle, right? Sure, why not?
Okay. So when a person says there's no evidence, sometimes they mean, I'm not convinced by the evidence you've given me.
Or sometimes they mean that there's no evidence. Sometimes that's really what they mean. Because the things that you think are evidence aren't. I wish you would tell us what evidence you think that you have so I could inspect it to tell you whether or not it is actually evidence. But so far all you've given us is a weak analogy that doesn't really work. And why not just tell us what evidence it is that you think that you have?
Okay. So the question, I think, at this point would be kind of our standard opener. What do you mean by that? Well, that's not evidence. Well, what do you mean that's not evidence? And that you're basically asking, why would this not be considered a piece of evidence as part of a larger case?
Because you don't have evidence of the phenomenon in question. That's the difference between the murder investigation and what you're talking about. We know that murders happen, we know that people are mortal, and we don't expect bodies to simply vanish into thin air. We don't expect people to come back to life, because that just doesn't really seem to happen. So, the point that I was making with all those weird ambiguous analogies that I was giving is that if something weird happens, you're not going to instantly jump, or at least if you're a good detective, you're not going to instantly jump to believing that it was magic or something paranormal or supernatural, because you don't have evidence that those things are actually things that can really happen. You would think, with all the body cams that we have out there on in the world recording various different crimes, that somebody by now would have recorded something bizarre that happens, but that doesn't happen. We don't, all the different news outlets, we don't see anything. So what you have is just bad arguments.
And the case that we're usually making is a case that's called abductive reasoning, where we are reasoning from the evidence, from the pieces of information or facts or whatever we can offer to the most reasonable conclusion. So what is the most reasonable explanation given the evidence or the pieces of information that we have regarding this issue? Okay.
Let's just be a little bit honest here. You start with the conclusion and then work backwards to then try to find the evidence that you think fits the conclusion. That's how apologetics really formed. Let's just be honest about that. You didn't go from the evidence that you have to the conclusion because you don't, like I said, none of the things that you think are evidence are probably actually evidence. But I don't know because you haven't told us what these things are. It's really interesting that you're not telling us what evidence you think you have. Why not just tell us, well, the atheist is clearly wrong. Here's the evidence, X, Y, and Z. I wonder why.
Okay. That's abductive. I'm trying to think of the other phrase that is used.
Deductive.
An inference to the best explanation.
Okay.
So when I say, well, I believe in God because, and in Christianity because it's the best explanation for the way things are.
Which isn't an answer, actually. Because that's the same answer that every religion's gonna give. And it's not. It's not even a explanation, let alone the best explanation. Because we have this thing called science that pretty much explains all the things just about. So, no, I'd rate that higher than any of your religious nonsense. So, science wins, you lose. And other religions get it a lot closer than you guys do, so, yeah, that's kind of a problem.
Then I look at the way things are and I say, here's how the Christian worldview.
That's called confirmation bias. I see. Oh, yes, of course. This is the best explanation for anything. Now I'm going to look around and go, oh, yeah, I see how that's true because of this. Look, this fits into my worldview. It's the complete opposite of what atheists and skeptics do. Broadly speaking.
Explains that. Why are humans unique?
I mean, in what way? What are you talking about? Why are we unique in what way? What is it that you don't think is explained adequately by evolution and biology that you think is explained better by Christianity? I'm really curious. See, now you're actually telling us what the evidences is, and now I'm telling you those aren't evidences at all. That just shows your ignorance on biology and evolution. So, yeah, that's not evidence.
Okay, well, they're made in the image of God. Well, what's wrong with them? Well, they're broken because we rebelled against God. Okay.
How do you know that we're in the image of God? What does that even mean? How could we be broken? I thought that God was perfect. How can something that has the image of something perfect be broken? Why and how could it rebel against God? In what way? Why would God care? these are not evidences at all. These are assertions. These are bald assertions that have absolutely no argument or evidence to back them up. You don't have evidence. You have bad arguments.
So we know humans are special. We know that there's something wrong with them.
Special in what way? Wrong with them in what way? According to you. I don't think that you, well, some of you, depending on what you mean by humans have something wrong with them, well, then that would be a fault of God and it made it that way, but I don't believe in God, so it's like, well, anything that we have wrong with us is like, what, some physical ailment or something? Like, what are you talking about?
Now, we have a way of explaining that. An atheist can't do either.
If you'd stop being so vague, I absolutely could explain any of that. But the thing is, atheism isn't about explaining any of those things anyways. So, you're just way off in the weeds. Again, this is so typical of apologists. Atheists don't need to answer any of these questions. But we have science that easily answers these questions that you seem to have. But you don't like those answers. See, I could say the same thing. You don't like that answer. You don't want that to be true because you want your belief to be true. Actually, it's true for you. It's not true for me. I don't care what the hell happens to be true. If you had evidence of it, I'd believe it. But you don't have evidence, so I don't believe it.
Because there isn't anything wrong if they're just molecules clashing in the universe. There are no standards.
We are, I mean, you're reducing down what we are to the very base particle. Yeah, we're just all spirits. Yeah, I can reduce that too. So we're all just spirits clashing around the universe, and it doesn't really matter.
Standards, for example, and there can't be something wrong with the world, and there can't be something wrong with human beings.
Wrong. There absolutely can be something wrong with the world and or human beings. It's just what it is that's wrong depends on what the hell you're talking about in the first place. You're being vague.
Per se, because, again, the standard's not there. So,
oh, he shifted it into the moral territory and do the whole, DCT bit. Yeah, whatever. Our morals are better than yours. End of story. We do have a standard of ethics. Stop playing around. Stop playing these little games. Just give us the evidence, which so far you haven't done, so you don't have anything so far.
The fact that we have explanations to these particulars that seem like obvious details of the world,
but you don't have any explanations. You have bald assertions. All your ideas thus far have been nothing more than appeals to ignorance or personal incredulity or both. And or bald assertions that you've made. You don't understand how X works, therefore God did it. It's God of the gaps. That's all you've got. None of that's evidence of anything other than your ignorance.
Gives us an opportunity to be building a case. So if a person said, well, that's not evidence, well, why isn't it?
Well, I know you're not going to watch this video, what's his name again? I keep forgetting his name. Greg or Amy. Neither one of them are ever going to watch this video, and probably nobody in their comment section is going to bother either. So they're not going to hear I already gave them the answer to that. None of that's evidence because everything that you said contains logical fallacies of some nature, appeals to ignorance, personal incredulity, God of the gaps, bald assertions. None of those things are evidence for anything. You're saying, oh, well, we have answers. No, you don't. You have things that you think answer questions, which may or may not be relevant, which are better answered and probably are answered by science, by study of the way that the world really works, rather than pretending that your Bible tells you how the world works and looking for things that then confirm the Bible, which is all you've done here. So you've got nothing. That's why it doesn't count as evidence. because you don't have evidence.
And I suspect they're going to say, because it's not conclusive. But of course,
No, it's not even that it's not conclusive. It's not even evidence. That's the problem. It's not even that you have anything other than bad arguments. You don't have even something to go on in the first place. You don't have evidence of the thing in question, the phenomenon in question, God, and what that is, what you think it is. You don't have evidence of that. And the things that you think point to that don't.
you don't conclude things generally from one piece of evidence.
It depends. It's really, really easy to conclude that I exist as a human. Well, because I'm talking like a human. What else, am I an AI bot? Maybe, but I mean, you'd have to have some indication that that's correct, and we don't have any indication that I'm an A bot. I am not a bot. Beep beep brr, brr, brr. Anyway, so we don't have any evidence that that's the case. But very.
Most of the time, you are piecing evidential elements together to form a conclusion.
It depends on what you're talking about, but it's so weird. Why would God be so fucking hidden? Why is it so hidden? Why is it that I have to piece together all this? I thought God was. See, it's interesting how it goes between God is obvious to you have to piece together all these evidences to see God. Well, which is it? Is it obvious or is it a mystery that you have to unravel somehow? Let's just assume for a moment that you had the archaeology to prove all this. You don't, but if you did, why in the bleep would God hide all that stuff? Why would it be, that we would have to find evidence of that it happened? Why wouldn't God just be like, hi, here I am. Here's God 24/7. You can talk to me anytime you want. I am evident. Here I am. Why wouldn't God do that? I know you guys have different answers to that question, but those answers are very unsatisfactory. God is so mysterious. Ooh, no, God isn't, other than in your mind, apparently, because you got nothing.
Of the time about just virtually everything. And so what would count as evidence, Ms. Nook?
Actual evidence, empirical evidence, repeatable tests, a valid and sound argument. You don't have any of that.
The question that one could ask. And the answer, unfortunately, the answer is always astronomical.
Aww. No, the answer is actually the same amount of evidence that I have for everything else. The same amount of evidence that I have for this guy, Greg. Yeah, I had to check his name again. The same amount of evidence that I have for Greg and Amy, if I had that evidence for God, I would think it's real. But I don't. So, there you go. My answer is the same amount of evidence that I have for everything else. I don't have that for God. So that's, we have different types of evidence for God. Nope. No, I want the same exact kind of evidence that I have for everything else for God. Oh, well, but that's not what God is. Well, then I don't care about God then. God doesn't exist until it has that sort of evidence to offer. It's not a thing then. That's what would count. That's not astronomical. It's equal. It's an equal amount of evidence. But I don't have that, and neither do you. All you have, as I said, and we'll keep saying, is bad arguments.
Well, if God would write my name in the sky while I'm standing there looking there, if he'd come and stand in front of me and say, I exist. I mean, it's a ridiculous standard.
Why? Why is that ridiculous? And also, I would say neither of those would convince me personally, because I could be hallucinating both of those. I'd have God appear to everybody simultaneously at the same time and interact with us humans all the time. Why not? Why is that a ridiculous standard? I have that for you. I have that of Dave, of Captive Desk, of B.S. Lewis. Why don't I have it of you? I can email or talk to these guys. They'll talk back to me. Or I don't have that for God. I don't have an email address for God. It doesn't respond at all. I say, "Hey God," and I have nothing back. Why? That's not ridiculous. It's ridiculous that God doesn't have that. You think it's ridiculous because God doesn't offer us overwhelming evidence so that nobody would doubt God and that everyone wouldn't be confused about what the bleep God is in the first place. All these people around the world have different gods. Yours isn't the only one to pick from. So, what would you require for a different God to be true? Well, yeah.
And as one wag put it, if God stood in front of you, you wouldn't go to God, you would go to a psychiatrist.
Yes, exactly. Because I could have gone mad. And the thing is, God would need to do that to everybody simultaneously so that I can be sure that if I've gone mad, well then the whole world's gone mad because everybody's saying that God's a thing. And now here's the thing. Here's what we would want to do. We'd want to make sure that we're all seeing the same thing. So can we describe God and write down what it looks like or sounds like? Can we And if we all had the same description, well then great. We're all seeing the same thing. It's not that hard. We can describe this guy. Man, I'm gonna forget his name again. I don't know why Greg. Greg, his name's Greg. Haha, I didn't forget this time. I don't know why I kept forgetting his name. We can all describe Greg pretty easily at this point. Okay, he's got he's got black glasses, gray hair, he's balding, he's got big old earphones, big old nose. I just want to go honk honk to that nose, really big nose there. It's got plaid shirt, what do we call it? Square on his shirt, Pretty easy, right? We'd all have the same description if we had to describe this guy. I wanted to call him Mike for some reason. That's not his name. His name is Greg. I don't know.
So this part of the problem here is the standard that's being used by the skeptic. It's unreasonable.
No, it really isn't. I have the same. I hold it to your God to the same standard I do everything else. I accept that you exist because I have overwhelming evidence that you exist. I have no reason to doubt that you do exist. I have absolutely none of that when it comes to God. And all the gods out there are identical as far as I can tell in that they don't have that sort of evidence for them. So why don't you believe in all the other gods? Well, cause astronaut, blah, 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 whatever.
What are other things that they believe? I think they believe in Darwinian evolution. Based
You're a moron. I'm done. No, I can't. I can't anymore. No, I'm done. He's a moron. We're done with him. Watch my video. Watch my video response to this, but you will not. And I give up. You said Darwinian evolution. Yeah, nitwit.
Yeah, evolution surpassed Darwin a long time ago, and it's not a belief. Biological evolution is an absolute fact, and that you don't agree with it is all I need to know about you. So I'm done. I'm done. Your God can't exist because it doesn't use evolution. Well done. You've proven that your God doesn't exist because you are against evolution. So therefore, your God's also against evolution. So your God can't exist because that's what happened. Evolution is how we're here. That's how it happened. Your God had to have used it. If you don't think that it did, then your God doesn't exist. Period. End of story. We're done. Thanks for watching. That's it. We didn't have any evidence here, any test, and we certainly didn't have any valid and sound arguments. So unless and until we do have those things, we're gonna have to keep on being skeptical of their conclusions and wishing that they would learn freaking science and logic too while they're at it. All right. Thanks, everyone. All right. Good night. Go to bed now. Good. Why are you still here? What? You want me to go insane at the end of my videos just because I do that in other videos? Oh man, I don't know if I have the energy for that. Is that really what you want? I already said Finn in chat. Once I do that, I usually press the button. I'm gonna press the button.